I'm Dr. Lora Shahine. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about lesbian baby making, 5 steps on how to get started. I'm Dr. Lora Shahine. I'm a reproductive endocrinologist helping people build families for over 15 years. And today we're going to talk about the steps to get started if you want to conceive with donor sperm and you are 2 people with 2 uteruses and maybe up to 4 ovaries. And so I know everybody uses different pronouns, and not everyone with a uterus identifies necessarily as a woman, but I'm talking about 2 people that have 2 uteruses, 4 ovaries, and they want to start their family. They know they need sperm to help start their family, and you're just kind of getting started, and you want to think about those steps and how to get started in this process. So if this is you, congratulations, it's really exciting, and I'm here to help with 5 easy steps. So thanks to everyone who's asked for this video. Your comments and questions help me know what you want to learn about. So if there's something that you want covered with fertility, miscarriage, reproductive health, please put what you want to learn about in the comments because I'm listening. So step number 1, think about your goals. So before you make an appointment with a clinic or you're even thinking about looking for donor sperm, think about what your goals are. Talk to your partner. And by goals, I mean, when do you want to get pregnant? Who wants to get pregnant? Whose eggs do you want to use? Who wants to carry the pregnancy? There are so many family building options for lesbians that it's okay to think about what your goals are. Sometimes I have families that want to be pregnant at the same time. Sometimes people want to do reciprocal IVF, where one person is providing the eggs and the other partner is carrying the pregnancy. Sometimes there's one person who wants to get pregnant and wants to do it as simply as possible with just donor sperm. And so that person's using their eggs and they're carrying. So there are so many options that it's important before you make that first appointment or before you definitely decide on sperm to really think about what your goals are, personal goals and your partner's goals. Number 2, think about how you want to do this. So do you want to work with a fertility clinic? Do you want to try to do inseminations at home? Do you want to work with a midwife that's helping with this care? I personally recommend working with a fertility clinic because we help think about the big picture, walk through goals, walk through different options of care, offer testing to make sure everything's okay, and just really walk you through how to optimize everything. Coming to a fertility clinic does not necessarily mean that you have to have interventions like medications or IVF or things like that. But I do think it's great to have a visit with a fertility doctor, talk about what options are available at the clinic and what they can offer you and provide excellent care. Number 3, think about doing testing. So this is usually done with a primary care doctor, or I would recommend with a fertility clinic. But if you've never tried to get pregnant before, you can't really assume that you're fertile or that there is not a fertility issue. And if you're investing in sperm and time and trying to conceive, I do talk to people about doing initial testing up front, good preconception care, making sure that you are immune to chickenpox, immune to German measles, thinking about chronic illness that you might want to make sure is as healthy as possible. If you have diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, kind of good preconception care, thinking about fertility testing. So it might be nice to kind of see where your ovarian reserve is, make sure fallopian tubes are open, make sure there's not an anatomic issue that's going to impact success. So sometimes people will try simple things first and then do testing later, but it's important to think about doing testing and connecting with a fertility clinic, especially if the person who's trying to conceive is over the age of 35, because fertility does decrease with age and you are investing a lot of time and resources into buying donor sperm and trying, and it just makes a lot of sense to make sure that everything's okay, or if there's anything that could be optimized that'll help you meet your goals sooner. Number 4, choosing sperm. So some people feel very strongly about choosing sperm that they know, so a known donor, but the vast majority of my patients are using anonymous donor sperm that they are purchasing from a sperm bank. And there are pros and cons. So a pro of using someone that you know is that you know this person. You hopefully know their genes and their family history and things like that. The downside of using a known donor is there's a lot of testing that goes into this. And we assume that people have normal sperm counts, but maybe that person that you really want to use their sperm, they actually aren't a very good candidate for being a donor. So it takes a little bit longer to use a known donor because the recommendation to avoid risk of contracting a sexually transmitted infection is to test the donor and then do a sperm collection at the same time, freeze that sperm collection, and then retest that person 6 months later, because there are some STIs that show up later in time. And so there's a recommended quarantine for known donors. I know that people try to conceive without this type of quarantine, but there are recommendations from the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, recommendations from the FDA on how to help people conceive in a safe way. And so working with a clinic, we help people use known donor sperm in my clinic, Pacific Northwest Fertility, but it can be a little bit more of an involved process. One other thing to think about if you're using a known donor is some future legal implications. There are some disagreements that come up over life and difference of opinions down the road. And using someone's sperm, if it results in a baby, that's a lifelong connection with that person. And so meeting with a reproductive lawyer that can really walk you through pros and cons and talk about legal documents that can protect all parties' interests before you use that sperm can be really helpful. The pro of using anonymous donor sperm from a sperm bank is all the testing is done, the quarantine is done, it's ready to go and ready to use. And it's usually a little bit of a quicker process, and that's just something to think about. And number 5, familiarize yourself a little bit with what options are available. So if you have sperm, it's one option is to do an intrauterine insemination, in which the sperm is thawed and placed into the uterine cavity around the time of ovulation. That is simple, it's low cost, it's low tech, and I'm just so hopeful that it works for my patients. Sometimes people go straight to IVF, which is much more complicated, more costly, but the benefits of IVF can be if there's tubal disease, it's a way to bypass fallopian tubes, especially if people are conceiving later in life, it has a much higher chance of success. Also, you have the option of reciprocal IVF, in which one person can donate the eggs, so the eggs can be extracted, embryos can be created in the lab, and then the other partner can actually have the embryo transfer and carry the pregnancy. So it's a way to share in the building of your family, and it can be very appealing to some people to think about that option. Let's recap. 5 tips for getting started with lesbian baby making. Number 1, think about your goals, your personal goals, your partner's goals. Who wants to get pregnant? Whose eggs are you going to use? Really think through that. Step 2, I recommend connecting with a fertility clinic to go through your goals and think about testing beforehand. And sometimes people do it in a different way, but my personal recommendation is to connect with a clinic. Number 3, think about doing testing before you get started, not making assumptions that anatomy is perfect or fertility is perfect, because you are investing financially and you're investing time. And so it's a thought of doing some testing first. Number 4, choosing sperm. Are you going to use a known donor? What's that process going to be like? Are you going to choose anonymous donor? Start looking at some sperm banks to learn a little bit about how that process works. And number 5, just learn a little bit more about what your options are. There's low-tech intrauterine insemination, there's high-tech in vitro fertilization. There are options, and it's nice for you to learn a little bit more. I have lots of videos here on intrauterine insemination, on IVF, and they can be really helpful as you're learning more about what your goals are. I hope this video was helpful. Like if you learned something, comment with questions that you have, subscribe to this channel, and stick around for more learning.